one of your new hits.
6:17 in Trinidad and Tobago. A bit of the maestro as we get going with our first interview this morning. And it's very kind of you to be with us, as I said, on this Thursday morning. Well, the 5 nominees by President Paula May Weeks for the Police Service Commission were approved by the House of Representatives via the government's majority. As was expected, all government MPs voted for, opposition MPs voted against, and so the situation stays the same in that regard. With the motion passed, though, it means that the country is one step closer to appointing a commissioner of police. Well, we're joined by a former member of the Police Service Commission, one of the leaders in the business community in the sister isle of Tobago as well. And indeed, before we conclude our discussion this morning, I'd like him to elaborate on his call for the beaches to be open in Tobago, because he sent out a video yesterday in that regard. So we'll get a perspective on that as well. So yeah, we have a lot of ground to cover. Martin George, good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning to you, Fazil.
Why are you laughing so much already?
No, because you put him in the hot seat already.
But you know that's a given, because you're the one who sent out the video. But let's deal with the with the substantive issue for which you invited and graciously accepted our invitation to appear for this morning's program. Okay, so we've had the approval of the 5 nominees from the President of the Republic. Things went as expected. Government voted for, opposition voted against. How do you put all of this in perspective?
Well, the thing is, Fazil, what I couldn't quite fathom or comprehend is the positions of the opposition, whereby they indicated that they had concerns with respect to 2 nominees. They raised specific issues in relation to them. But yet, when it came to the vote, they voted against all 5. So I can't understand that in terms of what one would expect as responsible parliamentary behavior. Because if it is that you raise objections in relation to 2 nominees and you bring your evidence, which the House Speaker indicated that she's not going to allow idle speculation, and she's quite right in that regard. So it's either you have concrete evidence to support your claims, which I'm not sure they necessarily met that threshold. But notwithstanding, if those are the 2 persons you had an issue with, I couldn't then understand voting against all 5, because then it appears that you are, opposing for opposing's sake, or you are just seeking to be obstructionist. And you see, that's what I always say. We have to try to hold our parliamentarians to a higher standard of behavior than that, rather than us, acquiescing in that type of flip-flopping on the national stage on serious issues.
But I mean, I'm struggling to come up with our next question. But you in making those points, we all know those to be true. I mean, that is the opposition have made it clear that they're going to oppose everything. So it is opposing for opposing's sake. But, Mr. George, with the greatest of respect, the opposition is interested in reinforcing its base. So that when the former Prime Minister, for example, talks about premeditated murder, again, this is not the first time she said it. She talked about premeditated murder in the case of the rising number of fatalities and so on in COVID-19. As irresponsible as that sounds, as nonsensical as the opposition's conduct is in the parliament, not saying that the government is any better, but I'll be talking about the opposition, that this is all about playing to a particular audience. This has nothing to do, Martin George, with good governance.
Well, and that's the tragedy that we face in Trinidad and Tobago. And it applies to both sides, and probably equally, in the sense that the base of the government would tolerate and accept any outrageous behavior because they think that their duty is to support regardless. And that's where we have to try to elevate the level of discourse for you and move the conversation beyond this blind support that, the sycophants and the party hacks keep, giving on, blindly. So we have to understand that we in Trinidad and Tobago will never move to a better place unless we get a groundswell of public opinion to move the needle away from this, blind fanaticism that you see from the party loyalists.
And therefore, while we could probably debate whether or not that will ever happen in our lifetimes or our grandchildren's lifetimes, and that is a discussion by itself, as far as this particular process, do you see any hindrances, any obstacles, any issues in the way that of the establishment of this Police Service Commission, the hopefully subsequent appointment of a commissioner of police, which hopefully will be passed in the parliament? From your experience, what sort of
I can tell you, Fazil, it's littered with a minefield going forward. First of all, if it is that there are real and valid concerns in terms of any of the appointees, we have to remember the matter which was brought by Reginald Dumas against the Attorney General, where he challenged the appointment of two former members of the Police Service Commission. Those were Dr. James Armstrong and Roma Achatseni. Right? He brought that action as a motion in the court, and it actually was dismissed initially because it was held that he had no locus standi, and it went all the way to the Privy Council, who ruled that yes, he did have locus standi to question or challenge it. So that's how you do it if you have a real and serious concern. So we don't know if anyone will go that route. The opposition hasn't really given us much more than what they've said in Parliament, which I think the Speaker was quite correct to deal with it as speculative at this stage. Then we also have to remember, Fazil, going forward, what is necessary is now the instruments of appointment to be issued to these commissioners, and then the president has to appoint a chairperson. One might expect that maybe former Justice of Appeal Judith Jones might be, a preferred candidate for that position, but it's entirely in the president's discretion as to whom she would appoint. Then now they have to consider the question of this mysterious merit list, because the question is, what do they do with it if it still exists? Because we've had a rather nebulous explanation, and I say this with the greatest of deference to the release from President's House. The explanation, I think, raised more questions than answers, and I say that very respectfully. But the fact is, this new Police Service Commission, they have to first deal with that. And I think that they need to actually come out to the public and explain what the actual situation is and how they intend to treat with it. Because for you, if they take that same merit list and try to move it forward now, there would be those who would raise questions as to the validity, integrity of that list. There would be questions raised as to, okay, what's the status of the investigation by former Justice of Appeal Stanley John? Because from what we were told that he was commissioned to do a certain investigation. How does that impact now upon the merit list? And of course, they have to also remember the Privy Council case of Jamaicans for Justice versus the Jamaican Police Service Commission, where the Privy Council ruled that a police service commission must investigate and consider all information, whether good or bad, against a candidate. So therefore, they cannot turn a blind eye to anything in any report that comes to them that is substantive and has evidence to back it up. So you have a minefield ahead of them, because if they then decide, well, we are going to scrap that merit list and start the process all over again, they may be faced with lawsuits from persons who may feel disenfranchised because they may say, well, I had done well in that previous process. I was high up on the merit list. So why are you starting it over? So, either which way, they are basically going to find themselves impaled on the horns of a dilemma, and there's no easy solution to the scenario.
So, I realize now I've pulled the finger out of the dike as far as this particular issue, because now that you've presented it in this way, and I'm sure it could be elaborated on much further, can we anticipate the appointment of a police commissioner, a substantive police commissioner, anytime soon?
I could tell you it certainly is not going to happen before Christmas. That's for sure, because you will see challenges. And then remember, we still have the matter before the court, which was brought by Anand Ramesar, his matter is still pending for decision. So you already have scenarios where persons are challenging. I saw that Mr. Gary Griffith has withdrawn his matter, but who knows, depending on what happens next, he may file another matter, because I saw he has, issued a warning to the public that we haven't heard the last of him. And I think that may be quite true in that regard. So, I don't envy the persons. I certainly salute them for coming forward to do national service, but there is really no easy way out of this conundrum in which we have found ourselves as a nation. So I await to see how they intend to approach it. But I think that whatever they do, they have to come out and relate to the public, ensure that the public has that trust and confidence in whatever choices they make and whatever processes they undertake going forward.
But hasn't that trust and confidence, not saying anything against the new appointees. I think most of us don't know who they are in the sense of, to say yay or nay about them as individuals of competence or whatever their affiliations may be. But just this entire matter, which again, and that statement from the, I don't know why you're so afraid to say anything critical of the president, like if they will send people to lock you up for it. This ain't North Korea or anything, but the point is, the president's statement left as much open as she attempted to clarify, and this is all going to come back to bite bite the government or bite the president or whoever, because they just simply have not been transparent in this process.
That's a point for you. And it's not a question of, not wanting to call names or anything. So it's just that I always prefer for you that we in Trinidad and Tobago try to maintain respect for the offices, even though we may
hold on right there,
behavior
Martin.
of office holders.
I know.
Yeah,
I've already been told by my producer we don't have much time, so don't go into any argument. Why should I respect somebody? Why should I respect an office when that office holder is not fulfilling his or her role as far as full transparency and accountability? Why should I respect that?
Well, for the Bible says, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. And we know that errare humanum est, to err is human. So the fact of the matter is that even though we put persons in high positions, it can be that mistakes can be made. And we have to understand that. We don't forget the mistake or absolve them necessarily of the mistake. We hold them to account. But what I'm saying is, in Trinidad and Tobago, we have a tendency to try to pull down the office as a result. And that's where I always have a difficulty, and I will always make that distinction. I will always say, call out an office holder if they have failed, but let's not, pull down our fundamental constitutional institutions in the process.
We can argue.
That's why I always try to keep it, in that way, by maintaining that respect for the office, because we need to maintain that going forward if we are in the process of nation building.
Well, I would argue
that's
that
important. I do agree, Fazil, that there's been a total lack of transparency and a lack of credibility. So therefore, that makes the work of this new commission even harder, which is why I'm saying they have to come out and speak to the public, relate to the public, so that they can build back that trust and confidence, because the image of the Police Service Commission has been damaged, hopefully not irreparably. But the fact is, it has suffered tremendous damage as a result of the last iteration of the commission. So the work for this new commission, their work is cut out for them, but I think that they can do it. I would certainly give them my fullest support and encouragement, but they need to be transparent. They need to relate to the public. They need to come out and explain things rather than trying to treat justice as a cloistered virtue. Remember the Privy Council case from since 1936. Right, Ambad versus Attorney General. Since then, we've been going to the Privy Council, 1936. And in that Privy Council case, Lord Deplox famously said, justice must not be a cloistered virtue. And I think that would be good, learning for the new Police Service Commission to take on board and ensure that they bring forth that transparency and clarity to the public, and that will bring up the confidence in the Police Service Commission.
You know, Martin George, your references to the Privy Council given me more reason to argue with you, but we don't have time. We'll hopefully at another opportunity we'll discuss this thing properly about these institutions. But in the time that we have available, and as I said, I hinted at it at the start. You sent out that video saying that the beaches should be opened up. We now have 512 cases. You know that ain't happening.
Right. Yes. Yes. Certainly. You know, the fact of the matter is, Fazil, my statement in that regard is not to be taken in isolation. It has to be looked at in the context of what I had originally suggested to the government to try to make Tobago a safe zone. So I had suggested that, look, we ramp up the vaccination drive in Tobago. I know that there are certain pockets of the population in Tobago that are particularly resistant to the vaccination. But I think that we needed to do much more, because I suggested that we try to get Tobago to herd immunity first. Try to get Tobago to that point where you can feel that, look, this is now a safe zone, in which case you would have been able to open the beaches. In light of the rising numbers, obviously, that is not likely to happen at all very soon. So, I mean, I think looking back in hindsight, it should have been an approach taken by the government. And I think we would all have been able to use Tobago as a little release valve, because the nation is under stress. Everybody's under pressure. Everybody's, suffering from COVID fatigue, So it would have been nice if there was a nice little safe zone or safe area called Tobago, where people could go for a vacation, go to the beach, carry their kids, and just basically, exhale for a minute, because the entire nation right now is waiting to exhale.
The problem is when you go there to Tobago to exhale, you inhale in the politics of the election on December the 6th, which might be very nauseating. But anyway, let's leave that for another time.
That is a whole different
That's a whole different story.
Because, even the COVID issues and the vaccination issues are tied into the politics of that election coming up in Tobago.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Very
Martin
clear
George,
that it is.
Martin George, I want to thank you very much, as always, for taking the time to offer
Always
your
a pleasure,
perspectives.
Fazil. Thank you and good morning.
Indeed, thank you very much indeed. Martin George there with us, former member of the Police Service Commission. I think when Professor Ramesh Diosaran would have been chairman of the Police Service Commission. So 6:34 in Trinidad and Tobago. It's now time to remind you of the COVID-19 protocols. Wear a mask over the nose and mouth when you go out in public. Keep your distance from others at least 6 feet or 2 meters. Stay home if you're ill. Wash your hands often with soap and water, or use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Cough into a tissue or into the crook of your elbow. Avoid touching your face. Sanitize those hard surfaces, tabletops, handrails, doorknobs, trolleys and cell phones as often as possible. We'll change our focus when we come back.
Find the place getting warm. It's dynamic musical pace. Everybody shaking their waist.